Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of By Me, Dee Dee. If you're new here, hi, hello, and welcome. It is great to have you. Here on Damn Canada, I like to cover all the lesser known murder, mystery, and mayhem cases that go on here in Canada and Canada only. So if that's something that you're interested in, I hope I see you around again. This case today I've known about for about a year and a half now, and it's been on my list of cases to cover ever since hearing about it. Since I've known about this case for what feels like to be a very long time, I was extremely surprised to find that this case has not been kept up with in the media as much as I had expected. To me personally, it's a case that really sticks with me. So of course I feel like, why wouldn't it stick with others? So today I really wanted to go over all the details and bring it to you all so that we can spread more awareness about this case, because awareness is life-changing, especially when it comes to a case like this. On October 12th, 1995, in the province of Saskatchewan, Chelsea Poorman gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. After she had given birth and was in the hospital, her friend Michael Kiernan went over to see how she was doing. While talking with Michael, Sheila expressed how she was going to put the baby up for adoption. Mike asked Sheila if he could go see the baby, and she said yes. And so Mike walked to the room where the little baby girl was being kept, and he laid eyes on the most adorable baby girl he had ever seen. This little bundle of joy with dark hair and nostrils that made the shape of a heart looked up at him, and in that moment he felt a feeling he had never felt before. Michael had also been adopted, and after seeing this beautiful baby, he went back to Sheila and asked her a life-changing question. Would you consider keeping her if I stuck around? You know, we did this together. And Sheila agreed. And with that, Mike named the beautiful baby Chelsea. They ended up dating, and a few years later, in 1998, they had another beautiful baby girl, and they named her Paige. Sheila had a 2-year-old daughter named Diamond when Chelsea was born, and so with Paige being born, they now had a family of 5. Unfortunately, things did not work out between Sheila and Mike, and they ended up splitting up, which resulted in Mike getting full custody of the 3 girls. Growing up, Chelsea was a very loving and caring child. She had a big soft spot for animals, and she was always thinking about others and was very considerate of other people's feelings. And those characteristics made Chelsea want to become a paramedic when she grew up. Like most children, that wasn't Chelsea's only interest though. She was very into the arts, particularly rap music, and her dad said that she was actually pretty good. She was also very active as a kid as well. She loved to swim, and Mike had jet skis and ski-doos that she loved to ride. As she grew into her teen years, she had a lot to express, a lot of questions, and a lot of feelings. Around 15, 16 years old, Chelsea wanted to go and live with her mom, and so she did. I believe her mother lived or was from the Kawakatus First Nation in Saskatchewan, which does make them Cree. And fun fact, the main reserve in the Kawakatus First Nation is Poorman 88, which is their last name. And I believe Chelsea's father was living in Regina or Saskatoon. I'm not 100% positive on where he was living at that time. Also around these teen years, Chelsea's rebelling was turned up a notch. There was a few instances where Chelsea went missing and was reported as such to the police. I found a news article from one of these instances where it stated she was missing at 16 years old but still had social media activity. Chelsea's father has said that she was never gone for more than a few days. And as a side note, we the public are not aware as to why Chelsea was running away from home at these times. And in 2014, Chelsea experienced a life-changing event. Chelsea was involved in a very serious car accident, which I believe involved a semi-truck. She survived this horrible accident, but she was left with some lifelong injuries. She was left with numerous scarring across her body. She had rods placed in her left leg, and she needed a leg brace on her left leg to walk, as well as a lifted shoe on her right. Her left arm also received rods, which left it permanently bent at a 90-degree angle, and she also was left with some brain damage, although the extent of it is not public. At some point, Chelsea's mother, Sheila, moved to Vancouver, BC, and eventually Chelsea's sister, Paige, decided she wanted to be closer to her mother, and so she moved in with her mother in her apartment in Vancouver. With her sister and mother both living out in BC, Chelsea wanted to be closer to them, and so she decided she wanted to move as well. And so in July of 2020, Chelsea moved to Burnaby, BC, and was living with a boyfriend and was making plans to go to film school, which BC is definitely the place you want to be if you're looking to get into that type of industry. It's like the Hollywood of Canada. Now, during that summer of 2020, Chelsea and her father weren't talking every day. It was never stated that they were fighting or anything like that, so I'm going to assume that it was the typical early 20-year-old not talking to their parents as much, which is extremely typical for that age. You're figuring out what you want in life, you're figuring out life in general, hanging with friends, partying, and all of that fun stuff. Family isn't usually at the top of your priority list at this point in your life. But because they didn't have that talk every single day type of relationship at that time, Mike was unaware that Chelsea was moving in and living with a boyfriend. See, Mike was under the impression that Chelsea was going to live with her mother and Paige. Mike has said that Chelsea was going to live with her mom and sister, but when she got there, Sheila had told Chelsea she couldn't live with them. Although we aren't sure how this all played out or if that is how it played out. We weren't there, and I don't in any way want to sound like I'm slamming Sheila at any point during this. I'm just trying to bring you all that was said to the public in a timeline form. But however that all did play out, Chelsea did end up living with an unnamed man in Burnaby, BC. But not long after Chelsea had arrived in the city, Sheila and Paige were unable to reach her. They ended up reporting Chelsea as missing, and for days they didn't hear a word from her, nor was her social media active. And after 5 days had gone by, Chelsea got in touch with her mom and said that she had lost her phone and had no way of reaching them. This whole situation of Chelsea being missing for the 5 days, Mike was also out of the loop about and doesn't know much information about. On September 5th of 2020, it was a beautiful sunny day in Vancouver. Chelsea, Paige, and Sheila had plans to hang out for the day, and so Chelsea traveled over from her home in Burnaby to her mom and sister's apartment in Vancouver. They had plans for all of them to go to dinner together, but Sheila decided not to go, thinking the girls could have a good sister bonding time, and they would probably have more fun without their mom around. I'm sure that wasn't true, Sheila. I'm sure they would have had lots of fun with you around. So Chelsea and Paige got ready, which Chelsea loved to do. She loved dressing up and doing her makeup for a fun night out. And they had plans to hit up the Granville scene. Granville is an entertainment district, so on Granville Street is where all the bars, hotels, clubs, all that scene is located. Just like most major cities with those entertainment scenes, it's usually like a strip, big road with just all that entertainment stuff all found down the road. You probably know what I'm talking about. I will stop rambling. And just in case you go and Google Map it and aren't familiar with the area, we are speaking about Granville in downtown Vancouver, not South Granville. Granville Street was also just a few blocks away from the apartment building where Sheila and Paige lived, and so they weren't really that far away from home either. So the sisters got all dolled up for the night, and Chelsea posted a photo to Facebook with the caption, "Hitting up every club tonight on Granville. Single, kissy face emoji." Wearing a gray sweater over a black lace crop top, black jeans, and brown boots while toting a beige purse, Chelsea looked fabulous like always as they hit the Granville scene. And so did Paige. They first went to dinner at a restaurant, and then after that they walked down Granville looking for their first bar to stop at. They walked up to the Belmont, which they thought looked pretty cool, because it does, and so they went on in to have a few drinks. They had a great time there, talking, laughing, all that fun stuff. And after having a couple of drinks at the Belmont, they decided to go to Paige's friend's apartment, which was just down the road. They walked down to 1278 Granville Street and headed up to the 4th floor where Paige's friend's apartment was. They were laughing and having an awesome time there as well. Then around midnight, Chelsea left the apartment without telling anybody where she was going. Their dad, Mike, had mentioned in an interview that Paige had told him that they did get into a little bit of an argument at some point, but it wasn't anything significant or anything like that as far as Paige was aware. So we don't know if this is the reason Chelsea took off without word, but I figured I'd mention it because many people wonder why she left in the first place, and that's kind of the only info we know about anything that happened in the apartment, so I just figured I would mention it. Concerned for her sister, since this was not like her, Paige started calling and messaging Chelsea. I believe Chelsea had messaged back a few times, and just before 1 a.m., Paige got through to Chelsea and asked where she was, and Chelsea replied back with, "Leave me alone, I'm with my new bae." Paige's concerns grew, and she asked, "Chelsea, who's there? Where are you?" But Chelsea replied with hanging up the phone. When Paige tried to call again, Chelsea's phone was turned off, and it hasn't been turned back on since. Sheila had been in contact with both girls throughout the night, and so she was aware when Chelsea's phone went off and everything. So Paige went home the next day, and they spoke about things and felt something was really wrong with all this, since neither of them had still not heard from Chelsea. And this was not like Chelsea at all. Sure, she had those few going missing incidences, but it wasn't anything like this in this type of situation. And they both had that mother-sister intuition that something was just seriously wrong. They were really hoping that Chelsea was just going to call them up or come to the apartment and tell them that she had a wild night or something like that. But when the day went by and they still hadn't heard from her, their concerns grew worse and worse, and so they went down to the Vancouver Police Department and filed a missing persons report on Chelsea. Paige has said it was either on September 7th or the 8th that they went and filed the police report, and the date does fluctuate between the two depending on which article you read, so I figured I would just throw both dates in. But unfortunately, the police didn't put out any kind of notice of Chelsea being missing until 10 days later on September 18th. The first police and news reports asking the public for assistance came out on September 18th, and along with that, the police really didn't do any real police work to look for Chelsea in those initial 10 days, from what it seems. And we all know that that is the most crucial time to get your investigative work done. Those first 48 hours, we hear it time and time again. I can't believe this is still an issue, to be honest. Sheila and Paige have expressed how frustrated and mad they are with how this case has been handled. At one point, Paige called the detective on the case and asked for updates, and she was told by this detective, "I have better things to deal with." Oh, do you now? With no help from the police, Paige and Sheila started doing their own search for Chelsea, with Sheila hiring a private investigator and them marching for Chelsea in the MMIWAG and MMIP walks that have been taking place across Canada, as well as canvassing her last known locations and posting up posters anywhere possible. And back in Saskatchewan, Mike was running his own search. Over the years, Mike had grown an interest in van life and enjoyed watching van life content. The more he watched that type of content, specifically Van City van life, the more he wanted to do it himself. I feel like most of us have been there at some point now. He had plans to try out the van life eventually down the road, but when Chelsea went missing, his dreams of van life came true in an unfortunate way. Chelsea had been missing for 4 months, and with Mike searching as much as he could in Saskatchewan, he decided to start his van life by converting a van into basically a central command station for Chelsea. It was pretty cool, actually. And he drove this van to BC, and I believe he actually drove it back and forth from BC to Saskatchewan, trying to spread the awareness. During Mike's travels, he actually got to be featured on Van City Van Life, thanks to Diamond and Paige's efforts. And that's actually how I found out about this case. Mike's efforts are very unique. His van is a very in-your-face approach that people just can't ignore. And another thing that makes Mike's approach to finding Chelsea different from Sheila and Paige's approach are his thoughts on the police efforts. he is actually very supportive of the police and does full-heartedly believe that they are doing all they can to help find Chelsea, and has been very vocal about it. And like I had mentioned, Paige and Sheila have a different feeling when it comes to all of that. On March 19th, 2021, the family and friends came together for a walk and a demonstration, followed by a candlelight vigil held in the intersection she was last seen. And then on the 1-year anniversary of Chelsea's disappearance, Sheila, Paige, and other supporters retraced Chelsea's steps of that night and walked from Granville and Drake to Victoria Square while posting up posters and spreading awareness. With Chelsea being Cree, it does make her one of the many missing and murdered Indigenous women that have gone missing in Canada. Her case is currently being handled by the Vancouver Police Major Crimes Section with detectives from both the Missing Persons and Homicide Unit assigned to the case. The police have said that her case is being treated as a missing persons case that does require additional resources. The investigation remains very active, and in order to protect the integrity of ongoing measures, they are unable to release information. Also, it is not being considered a homicide at this time. And I understand, as frustrating as it is, I understand why we aren't getting any kind of information from them if they have information. Maybe they have information they can't release. You just never know with this kind of stuff what's going on in the background. And as much as I want to sit here and be like, give us information, tell us what you know, anything, I understand that releasing that information to the public, that is also being released to the criminals or the people that have her, whatever the case may be. But with that being said, I do also understand how it looks, though, when you hear of other missing persons cases being treated so very differently, families not being left out of the loop and questioning their own sanity. And on top of it all, Chelsea is Cree, and so it is hard to have faith in the police justice system when people know the history between the authorities and the Indigenous people. And that includes the current times going on right now. All we can hope is that there is a lot more work being done on her case than what we can see, and that the police are working their damn hardest to prove to all of us that have doubts wrong and to find Chelsea. Now that's pretty much all the information I have for you guys for the timeline aspect of this video. I'm actually going to do things a little differently this time, and I'm going to go over some of the details and questions I have seen being asked about this case. So Chelsea's bank accounts and social media have had zero activity since she's gone missing, which is very concerning to the family. Another thing is that we do know that she had that phone call with Paige, and the police were able to get the last location her cell phone pinged from, which was Victoria Square. But with that being said, her last location could be within a 5-kilometer radius of Victoria Square, because that's how the whole pinging off the towers work. Also, the apartment that Paige was at that Chelsea left was 12 blocks south of Victoria Square, which makes it in that 12-kilometer radius, and we will come back to that in just a minute. So another question you may be wondering is, what about cameras? Well, what we can assume is due to the police not doing a thorough investigation in those initial 10 days, there is zero footage, from what we know, of Chelsea leaving the apartment building or being seen on any of the streets after entering that building. And there was actually a police community building right across the street from that apartment building, but the camera facing across the street had water damage, and therefore it wasn't working, like in many, many cases. Although you don't usually hear it being like a police center or something like that. I found that a little interesting. Don't you have money to replace broken cameras? Like, I feel like that's important. I don't know. Due to the amount of time that had passed, we can only assume that the reason there is no surveillance footage of Chelsea at all is because it already had been erased or written over, since who knows how long it actually took for the police to ask for that footage. Although they have made a public statement that said that they did a thorough search through all surveillance footage available. Surveillance footage. But police do say a lot of things. Now, let's remember they were on Granville, the entertainment district, in 2020. Of course, there's going to be cameras everywhere, and people that are familiar with this area have confirmed that. And not only that, but myself, I'm going to go ahead and assume that there would have been a decent amount of people out and about between midnight and 1 a.m. in the bar, club, party area of the city. Hey guys, it's Editing D. While I was editing, Paige actually had posted a post to the Bring My Sister Chelsea Home Facebook page, stating that it was very busy that night, that she went missing on September 6th, 2020 on Granville. It was Labor Day weekend. It was a very busy night for Labor Day weekend. Of course, it usually is. So I just wanted to include that here, because I feel like that is a very important piece of information, because many people could have been taking pictures that night, all sorts of stuff. And so the more people out, the more likely it was that somebody seen her if she was walking down the street. But that leads me to the next thought that has maybe crossed your mind. Did she ever leave the apartment building at all? That apartment building has 3 exits: the front door, the parking garage door out the back, and the regular back door. From my research, I do get this feeling that there is a lot of speculation into if she ever really did leave that building at all. Mike did a little investigative work for himself and found out that that apartment building does have cameras, but that only the owner has access to them. And of course, Mike had asked the owner about the cameras, but he was told they wouldn't show anything. And we are, of course, unaware of what exactly that means. People invested in this case have also had some questions in regards to the people in the story. It's been asked how many people were at Paige's friend's apartment and if they had all been looked into. Mike has said he is unaware how many people were there, but as far as he is aware, everyone that was there has been interviewed and ruled out. It's also been mentioned that Chelsea was living with a boyfriend in Burnaby. Now, that night that Chelsea was going downtown with Paige, she had made that Facebook post that said single in it. So naturally, there have been many questions asking who this boyfriend or ex-boyfriend was at the time. That guy has never been named, and Mike has stated that that guy has been looked into and he has been ruled out as well. Now, staying on this whole single thing, when Paige got a hold of Chelsea on the phone, Chelsea said she was with her new bae. Now, this has really stuck out to everybody, anyone who listens to this case. Who was this new bae? Where did she meet him? Where were they? Chelsea had only been gone from the apartment for less than an hour. So if this wasn't somebody she already knew, where did she meet a new bae in such a short amount of time? Myself, personally, just my opinion only, I've wondered if this was something she was told to say. And the reasoning to this thought is because her phone was shut off right after that. I think the most common thought and fear right now is that Chelsea is being held against her will somewhere. I really get the impression that the family doesn't believe that she is gone and that she is still out there and it is possible to bring her home. Mike lived in his van searching for Chelsea, spreading awareness for over a year. He does now have a small apartment in BC, but he is still out every single day searching for Chelsea. He also goes to a mural that was designed for Chelsea every day at 5:30, hoping that one day Chelsea will meet him there. There is a website for Chelsea. It's chelseapoorman.com. From that website, you can click and print her missing persons poster. And please, if you can do this, it would make a huge difference. No matter where you're located, you seriously never know who could see that poster. The family has expressed that the posters they put up keep getting taken down and that businesses won't let them post the posters in their buildings. And hearing that just broke my heart. These families of the MMIP are out there every single day with heartache most of us will never understand. And some people can't even be bothered to help by putting a damn poster up in their business window. It's unbelievable, honestly. So if you have a public business or work at one, especially in BC, please post up Chelsea's missing person poster. Having missing persons posters are never a stain on a business. If anything, it's a good thing to show the public that you care and are involved with the community. It's literally the least you can do. Chelsea Poorman is 26 years old right now. She is 5'3", and when she went missing, she weighed around 120 pounds. She has long brown hair and brown eyes, although sometimes she does wear green contacts. Chelsea did have a significant amount of tattoos on her chest and neck, but she was actually in the process of having them removed at the time of her disappearance. And so she only has a few visible markings left, but those would be distinct markings to help identify her. I believe there's just a few ones on her neck, and it maybe looks like her chest is pretty faded. I will have pictures up on the screen for you guys to see. And like I had mentioned, Chelsea has noticeable scarring on her arms and legs. Her left arm is permanently bent at 90-degree angle, and she walks with a limp. She also walks with a leg brace on her left leg and a lifted shoe on her right, and would have a very difficult time walking without the leg brace. And I thought I would throw it in here that her family has also said she is soft-spoken. There is also a $20,000 reward for information that helps to find Chelsea. If you have any information, no matter how small, please reach out to the Vancouver Police Department at 604-717-2500. You can also contact Crime Stoppers by app, webpage, or phone at 800-222-8477. You can also visit the chelseapoorman.com website and submit any tips or info through the Zendesk chat, which is located on the bottom right side of the website. And that is all the information I have for you guys today. I feel like Chelsea's case is every girl's worst nightmare. A lot of us do go through that whole going downtown, going to the club party phase. And I know I definitely did. And thinking back, there was plenty of times that I could have just been snatched up right off the street so very quickly, or one of my friends. And cases like this really opened my eyes, and I'm sure it opens a lot of other people's eyes to the dangers that could happen in the most carefree of times. Another thing I just wanted to say is I really hope that Paige is doing okay and hanging in there. I watched a video of her expressing how she was blaming herself for Chelsea going missing, and my God, did that break my heart. I can't imagine how she was feeling and is feeling, but I hope that it didn't last too long on her, since this was in no way whatsoever her fault in any way possible. I just can't imagine having your sister missing and then blaming yourself for it when there's no need to blame yourself. Anyways, I hope you all got some good information on Chelsea's case from this video. If you did and want to give it a thumbs up, that would really help it get pushed through the algorithm so that more people can be made aware of Chelsea's case and more pressure can be put on it. And with that being said, please stay safe out there, and I will see you again in my next video. Bye!